What if the choices you make as a teenager decide whether you live with regret or with purpose? Your teenage years are not just practice for real life. They are real life. The time you waste can never return, but the discipline, courage, and focus you build now can shape the person you will become forever. Imagine a teenager, restless and distracted, wasting hours scrolling, chasing the approval of people who barely care. He thinks life will truly begin later, after high school, after college, after someday. But years pass, and that someday never comes. He looks back and realizes he traded away the most powerful years of his life. Now, imagine another teenager. Instead of chasing temporary pleasures, she invests in herself. She reads, learns, builds skills, takes risks, even fails, but grows. She uses her teenage years as a foundation, not a playground. And years later, when others regret what they lost, she rises with strength, clarity, and direction. Your teenage years can be the launchpad for greatness, or the slow path to regret. The question is, how will you use them? The sun rises slowly over a quiet small town, its light spilling across rooftops like a promise of new beginnings. Inside a modest bedroom, a boy named Daniel, 16 years old, stirs under the weight of another restless night. His room is a silent portrait of contradiction. On one side, books stacked with dust, untouched, almost forgotten. On the other side, a guitar he once begged his parents to buy, leaning in the corner like an abandoned dream. The room smells faintly of old paper, socks, and the faint buzz of a life lived in distraction. Daniel lies on his bed, phone in hand, his thumb moving without thought. Notifications blink, group chats exploding with meaningless chatter, memes that make him laugh for 3 seconds before vanishing into the void, videos that keep pulling him deeper into an endless scroll. His eyes are tired but addicted, and in his mind a whisper repeats like a lullaby. There's always tomorrow. I've got time. The camera of this story zooms in on the clock above his desk. Its second hand ticks relentlessly, a sound that cuts through the silence. Tick, tick, tick. The sound is steady, merciless, uncaring. Each tick is a reminder that time is moving whether Daniel moves with it or not. But to Daniel, the illusion is powerful. It feels as if life stretches forever ahead of him, as if tomorrow will always be waiting. From downstairs, his mother's voice rises, full of weary care. Daniel, you're going to be late for school. Get up already. He doesn't move at first. He scrolls a little longer, lets out a sigh, then finally drags himself upright. His body language speaks louder than words, shoulders slouched, eyes dull, movements slow. He is not lazy by nature. He is simply caught in a belief so many teenagers fall into, that he has time, that he can waste today because tomorrow is guaranteed. He dresses quickly, not bothering to brush the dust off his old notebooks, not noticing the small cracks forming in his future. Outside, the morning air is cool, crisp, carrying the smell of dew on grass and faint car exhaust from commuters rushing to their jobs. Daniel meets his best friend, Tyler, at the corner. Tyler smirks, his backpack hanging loosely over one shoulder. Man, you're always dragging. Relax. We're young. We've got all the time in the world. Daniel laughs, nodding. Exactly. Why stress now? The two walk together, joking, talking about weekend plans, a new video game release, a party someone mentioned. Around them, the town buzzes with quiet motion, neighbors mowing lawns, a mail truck passing by, workers heading to their offices. The adults move with urgency. The teenagers move with carelessness. As the boys reach the schoolyard, the camera of this imagined film rises higher. We see kids laughing, gossiping, sharing snacks, lost in their own bubbles. The sun casts long shadows across the playground, and yet no one notices how quickly those shadows shift. Then comes the voice, the narrator, quiet at first, but growing in weight, wrapping around every scene like the invisible hand of time itself. Life always feels longer than it is. When you're young, you believe you have forever. You think you can waste a day, because tomorrow is safe. Tomorrow will always be waiting. But time does not wait. Every tick of the clock brings you closer to your future, or further away from it. The camera cuts back to Daniel, laughing with Tyler, eyes full of a carefree glow. He doesn't see the clock ticking in his mind, doesn't see the dreams fading in the corner of his room. He doesn't realize the guitar will one day be sold in a garage sale, that the dusty books will one day remind him of chances lost, that these hours will never return. Slow motion freezes the moment, kids in mid-laughter, Daniel smiling, the clock ticking louder, louder, louder. Fade to black. The illusion of endless time is the most dangerous lie youth will ever believe. The first bell of the school day rings out, sharp and metallic, echoing through the long hallways lined with pale lockers. The sound cuts across the chatter of teenagers, their voices rising and falling like a wave, laughter, teasing, gossip, the careless noise of youth. Daniel walks among them, his backpack half-zipped, papers sticking out at odd angles. He blends into the crowd, invisible in his sameness. The hallway is a blur of motion, sneakers squeaking against the polished floor, lockers slamming shut with metallic clanks, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. Teachers call out reminders. Class starts in 5 minutes. Let's go. But the words wash over the students like background noise. No one rushes. Not really. They think they have time. Daniel drifts past his locker without opening it. He knows his math book is inside, the homework he didn't touch lying crumpled between pages. But instead of stopping, he just keeps walking, shoulders slouched, eyes half-focused. Tyler bumps him playfully from behind. Dude, forget the books. Half the class didn't do the homework either. Don't sweat it. Daniel chuckles, relieved, as if validation from a friend is all he needs to justify the neglect. Yeah, it's not like it matters. But it does matter. The camera closes in on the math book sitting in the locker, its spine cracked, its pages filled with problems unsolved. The camera holds there, lingering, before following Daniel's careless steps as he heads to class empty-handed. Inside the classroom, students chatter until the teacher arrives. Mrs. Carter, mid-40s, stern but tired, sets her folder on the desk with a decisive thud. The room hushes, but only a little. She looks at her students with a mix of expectation and disappointment, the kind only teachers who've seen decades of wasted potential carry in their eyes. All right, she begins, voice steady. Homework check. Everyone put it on your desk. Daniel freezes. Around him, notebooks slide open, papers shuffle. He stares at his empty desk, his heart beating faster. He thinks of excuses, but none come. When Mrs. Carter's eyes land on him, the silence stretches like a noose. Daniel, she says slowly, disappointment lacing her tone. Again, heat rushes to his face. His classmates snicker quietly. Tyler throws him a sympathetic glance, but that doesn't soften the sting. Daniel shrugs, forcing a smirk. Sorry, I forgot. The teacher doesn't argue. She simply writes his name down and moves on. But that moment, small as it seems, carves another notch into his growing belief that it's okay to let things slide. The scene shifts to the classroom clock. Its hands move silently, relentlessly. Every tick eats away at his youth, but Daniel doesn't see it. Instead, he doodles absent-mindedly in the corner of his notebook, drawing shapes instead of solving problems. The world outside his mind keeps moving, but inside, he convinces himself it can all wait. At lunch, the cafeteria bursts with life, trays clattering, conversations overlapping, the smell of pizza and fries thicken the air. Daniel and Tyler sit at a table with a group of friends, laughter bouncing between them. They talk about parties, crushes, video games, anything but the future. Their voices are loud, full of energy, but empty of purpose. College. One kid scoffs when the subject accidentally comes up. Man, that's years away. Chill. We've got time. The table erupts in agreement. Daniel laughs the loudest, though deep inside, a small voice whispers something different. For a flicker of a second, he feels uneasy, like the clock is mocking him. But he shakes it off, grabs another fry, and lets the noise drown out the whisper. Later, the day ends with the final bell. Students flood the hallways again, rushing for buses, cars, freedom. Daniel drifts outside, the autumn air sharp in his lungs. Leaves scatter across the pavement, carried by the wind like restless thoughts. He pauses for a moment, watching them dance across the ground. The world feels bigger than him, faster than him, unstoppable. The camera zooms in on his face, young, bright, but distracted, unaware of the truth pressing down on him. And again, the narrator's voice slips in, steady, almost sorrowful. The illusion of endless time is strongest when you are surrounded by others who believe the same lie. It echoes in laughter, in excuses, in promises of tomorrow. But time does not echo. Time moves. And every wasted day writes a story you cannot erase. The scene fades to black as Daniel walks toward the bus, the clock still ticking in his mind, unseen, unheard, unforgiving. The bathroom mirror at school is streaked with water and fingerprints, a perfect reflection of teenage chaos. Daniel stands there, leaning on the sink, staring at his own reflection. His hoodie is slightly wrinkled, his hair uncombed, his eyes holding a weariness far too old for 16. He splashes water on his face, hoping to wake himself up, but nothing changes. The mirror throws back the same restless boy. Behind him, other boys rush in and out, laughing, teasing, talking about the game that evening, about crushes and rumors. Their voices bounce off the tiled walls like echoes, but Daniel hears none of it. For a moment, all he can hear is the beating of his own heart and the faint drip, drip, drip of a leaky faucet. He looks at himself and mutters, almost under his breath, "I'll figure it out tomorrow." The words taste sour as soon as they leave his lips, but they're comfortable. They're safe. They're the excuse that has carried him through missed assignments, broken promises, abandoned hobbies. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. The camera lingers on his reflection. Two Daniels staring at each other. The boy he is, and the boy he could be. One is tired, drifting, lost in distractions. The other, somewhere deep in the glass, is sharper, stronger, waiting to be awakened. But Daniel doesn't see that second version. Not yet. The door opens. Tyler walks in, tossing a football lightly in his hands. "Bro, what are you doing? You look like you just saw a ghost." Daniel forces a laugh, straightening. "Just thinking." "About what?" Nothing. Doesn't matter." Tyler smirks, throwing the ball up and catching it. "Don't waste your brain cells, man. We've got years before any of that matters. Let's just live it up." Daniel nods, pretending to agree, but something in his chest twists. The mirror behind him catches Tyler's reflection too, and for a second, Daniel imagines them both older, tired, stuck, wondering where the time went. He shakes his head to push the thought away. The bell rings again, snapping him out of his trance. The hallway floods with noise, and Daniel steps out into the current of students, carried along like a leaf in a river. He doesn't fight it. He doesn't steer. He just lets the tide take him. Later that night, he lies in his room again, the glow of his phone lighting up his face. Hours slip by, one video, then another, then another. His textbooks sit unopened beside him, the guitar still collecting dust. He tells himself, "Tomorrow I'll study. Tomorrow I'll practice. Tomorrow I'll change." The narrator's voice breaks in, soft but unyielding. "Tomorrow is the cruelest lie you will ever believe. Tomorrow feels safe. Tomorrow feels endless. But tomorrow never arrives. It only turns into today. And if you waste today, you waste them all." The scene closes on the clock beside his bed, its red digits changing from 1:59 to 2 a.m. Daniel's eyes finally close, the phone slipping from his hand. The room goes dark, but the ticking of time never stops. Fade out. The autumn sky hung low over the football field, gray clouds threatening rain. The bleachers buzzed with students cheering, laughing, living in the moment. Daniel sat near the back, his hoodie pulled tight around his face, his phone glowing faintly in his hand. Tyler was on the field, tossing the ball around with the team, his voice echoing with confidence. Daniel should have been there too. He had the talent, the speed. Coaches had once told him he had potential. But potential doesn't survive neglect. Instead of practice, Daniel had chosen another evening of scrolling, of empty hours. He convinced himself it didn't matter. "I'll try out next season. I'll have time later." But later never came. The whistle blew, the game kicked off, and the crowd roared. Daniel watched half-heartedly, his eyes drifting between the field and his screen. His stomach tightened with something he didn't want to name: regret. Every touchdown Tyler scored felt like a spotlight, shining on what Daniel had chosen not to chase. A voice in his head whispered, "That could have been you." After the game, the students poured out of the bleachers, their voices a river of energy. Tyler jogged over, sweat dripping down his forehead, his smile wide. "Did you see that catch? Man, the scouts are going to go crazy next year." Daniel forced a grin. "Yeah, it was sick. You should come out tomorrow, bro. You'd kill it." Daniel shrugged, the same excuse ready on his lips. "Maybe later. I've got time." The words left his mouth easily, but inside, they burned. He could feel the weight of them pressing on his chest, heavier with every repetition. That night, he lay in bed replaying the game in his head. The crowd's roar. The flash of Tyler sprinting across the field. The chance he had let slip by. His room was dark except for the red glow of the clock. Midnight. Then 1 a.m. He tossed, turned, his mind gnawing on what-ifs. The narrator's voice slipped into the silence, as steady as the ticking clock. Every choice carries weight, even the ones that feel small. Skipping practice, ignoring a chance, saying maybe later. Every decision writes your story, and one day, you'll realize that later was never coming. Daniel closed his eyes, pretending he didn't hear it, pretending tomorrow would fix everything. The screen of his phone lit up once more, and he let it pull him back into the illusion. Fade to black. The music pulsed like a heartbeat inside the crowded house, bass shaking the floors, lights flashing against the ceiling in dizzy colors. Teenagers spilled into every corner, on couches, in the kitchen, leaning against the walls with red plastic cups in hand. Laughter rose and crashed in waves, loud enough to drown out every thought. It was the kind of Friday night everyone bragged about come Monday morning. Daniel stood near the back door, Tyler at his side, both of them grinning as if they belonged here. For a moment, Daniel felt alive. The air was thick with sweat, perfume, and cheap cologne, and the music drowned out the nagging voice in his head. He wasn't thinking about the test on Monday, or the essay due Tuesday. He was thinking about right now, about how much fun it was to forget. "Man, this is it," Tyler shouted over the music. "This is high school. Nights like this, you can't waste them." Daniel nodded, laughing, though somewhere deep inside the words didn't sit right. Was this really it? A night of noise, of empty conversations, of forgetting who you were for a few hours? Hours slipped away unnoticed. The clock in the kitchen ticked on, ignored by everyone. 9 p.m. became 11, 11 became 1. Daniel checked his phone once, saw 3 missed calls from his mom, a reminder about the test, and quickly shoved it back in his pocket. He didn't want reality to intrude. He didn't want to face what came after. In the living room, a group of kids shouted, urging him into a drinking game. He hesitated for only a second before Tyler pushed him forward. "Come on, man, don't be lame." The night blurred after that. Voices became fuzzier, lights brighter, laughter louder. By the time Daniel stumbled out onto the back porch, the air was cold against his flushed skin. He leaned on the railing, staring at the dark sky. Stars shimmered faintly above, distant and unreachable. In that stillness, for just a breath, Daniel felt something heavy pressed down on him. The knowledge that tomorrow morning, the test would still be waiting. The homework would still be undone. The future would still be moving closer, whether he was ready or not. He whispered to himself, almost angrily, "I'll deal with it tomorrow." But tomorrow always came with a cost. The scene shifts. Morning light pierces through his blinds, cruel and sharp. His head pounds, his mouth is dry, and his alarm clock blares mercilessly. 7:30 a.m. He should already be on his way to school. Instead, he drags himself up, every step a punishment. At school, the test paper sits in front of him like an enemy. Numbers and words blur on the page, his mind blank, heavy with exhaustion. Around him, pencils scratch as others write. His own paper stays nearly empty. The narrator's voice cuts through the silence, heavy, unyielding. One night can steal more than hours of sleep. It can steal focus, opportunity, and the future you were meant to build. The illusion of endless time whispers that you can always recover, that there will always be another chance. But every wasted night writes tomorrow in ink, and ink does not erase. Daniel stares at the clock on the wall, its hands moving forward with calm indifference. Tick, tick, tick. Each second feels like a judgment, each moment a reminder that time only moves one way. The scene ends with his pencil slipping from his fingers, the paper still nearly blank, his future quietly slipping further out of reach. Fade out. The brown envelope sat at the edge of the kitchen table like a sealed verdict. Daniel's name was printed neatly on the front, but no one had dared to open it yet. The house was unusually quiet for Saturday morning. His mom washed dishes at the sink, her back turned, movement slow and deliberate. His dad sat at the table, sipping coffee with both hands wrapped around the mug, as if it were the only warmth in the room. Daniel came down the stairs slowly, each creak of the steps a drumbeat of dread. He already knew what was inside. He didn't need the numbers to tell him what he had done with his time, or what he hadn't. Still, there it was, waiting for him, the truth hidden in white paper and black ink. Sit, his dad said without looking up. Daniel obeyed, sliding into the chair across from the envelope. His mom finally turned off the water and dried her hands on a towel, joining them at the table. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence was thick, like the air before a storm. Finally, his dad reached for the envelope, tearing it open with steady hands. He unfolded the paper inside, eyes scanning the lines, and then he sighed. Not loudly, not angrily, just a quiet, tired sigh, the kind that felt heavier than shouting. C's, D's, an F. His dad's voice was flat, unreadable. Daniel, this isn't who you are. Daniel swallowed hard, but his throat was dry. Words tangled in his mouth, excuses fighting to come out. The tests were hard. I'll do better next time. Everyone struggles. But none of them felt strong enough to break the silence. His mom spoke next, her voice softer, almost pleading. You used to care, Daniel. Remember last year? You'd sit at the kitchen counter with your books open, asking questions. What happened? He wanted to tell her that time happened, that distractions happened, that he believed he had endless days to make it right, endless nights to catch up, endless tomorrows to start fresh. But instead, he stared down at his hands, twisting them together until his knuckles turned white. I'll fix it, he muttered. When? His dad asked sharply, setting the report card down between them. When, Daniel? You keep saying tomorrow. You keep saying later. But later is turning into never. The words struck deep, sharper than any punishment. Daniel blinked rapidly, eyes burning. He wanted to shout, to explain, to push the blame somewhere else. But he couldn't, because deep down, he knew the truth. No one had stolen his time. He had given it away, piece by piece, to parties, to video games, to late-night distractions that promised happiness, but delivered emptiness. The kitchen clock ticked steadily, filling the silence. Tick, tick, tick. Every sound pressed against his chest like a reminder that time was moving, whether he was ready or not. His mom reached across the table, gently placing her hand over his. We're not angry. We're scared for you. Because every semester you waste makes the next one harder. Every chance you ignore closes a door you may never open again. Her touch was warm, forgiving, but it didn't erase the sting of the truth. Daniel stared at the report card, the grades swimming in his vision, each letter a mirror reflecting his choices. The narrator's voice enters, slow and deliberate. Life doesn't fail you overnight. It fails you in whispers, in skipped assignments, in ignored responsibilities, in wasted hours. Until one day, the report card doesn't just grade your schoolwork, it grades your life. And the paper doesn't lie. Daniel pushed back from the table, unable to sit any longer. He walked to the window, staring out at the neighborhood. Kids rode bikes down the street, free and laughing, their futures unwritten. He felt the weight of his own future pressing in, written already in marks he wished he could erase. Behind him, his dad's voice softened, almost breaking. Son, I just don't want you to look back one day and realize you traded your future for nights that meant nothing. The scene ends with Daniel gripping the window frame, tears blurring his vision, as if he could see time itself slipping past in the blur of kids riding by. Fade out. Friday night. For most of Daniel's friends, It was the highlight of the week, a chance to laugh, party, and escape the stress of school. But tonight, the glow of his phone lit up his dark room, messages flooding in from the group chat. Yo, everyone's at Josh's place. Pull up. We got pizza, music, the whole vibe. Don't miss out, man. Daniel stared at the screen, thumb hovering. His heart ached with the familiar tug, the need to belong, the pull of laughter and easy distractions. He glanced at his desk. Books lay scattered, unopened. His history project, due Monday, sat half-finished. His report card still burned in his mind, each failing grade like a fresh bruise. He threw his phone onto the bed, pacing his room. The walls felt smaller tonight, suffocating. He thought about his dad's voice at the kitchen table, about his mom's worried eyes. He thought about the promises he made. I'll fix it. I'll do better. And here he was, at the edge of another choice. The music from next door drifted faintly through the walls, muffled but alive. Daniel closed his eyes and could almost imagine himself there, laughing, joking, forgetting the weight, the fear, the truth. But when he opened his eyes again, he wasn't at the party. He was still here, in the quiet, with nothing but the sound of the ticking clock. Tick, tick, tick. He sat at his desk and tried to focus. Pen in hand, book open. But the words blurred together, his mind restless, bouncing between guilt and temptation. Minutes passed, then hours. And still, the paper in front of him remained mostly blank. Frustrated, he pushed back from the desk and collapsed onto the bed. His phone buzzed again. A photo this time, his friend smiling, arms around each other, a pizza box open on the table, music speakers glowing in the background. Daniel zoomed in, staring at their joy. It looked so easy, so weightless. He felt heavy. The narrator's voice cuts in, calm but piercing. This is how time is wasted. Not always in loud rebellion. Not always in dramatic choices. Sometimes, it's in the quiet hours of indecision. In the spaces where you do neither the thing you should, nor the thing you want. You sit. You scroll. You stall. And time slips away. Daniel tossed the phone aside, burying his face in the pillow. Tears stung his eyes, though he didn't fully understand why. Was it regret? Fear? Or was it the ache of realizing that his friends were moving forward, while he was standing still? The night grew late. The laughter outside quieted, replaced by the soft hum of crickets. Daniel finally sat up, staring at his half-finished project. He whispered to himself, voice shaky but firm, I can't keep doing this. The words weren't loud. They weren't dramatic. But they were real, a fragile spark in the middle of the darkness. He picked up the pen again, hand trembling, and began to write, not because he suddenly wanted to, but because he knew he had to. And as the scene fades, we see him under the dim desk lamp, face tired but determined, scribbling late into the night, while the clock on the wall reminds him, with every second, that the illusion of endless time is slipping away. Fade to black. Saturday morning sunlight crept through Daniel's blinds, streaks of gold cutting across the messy floor. Empty soda cans, crumpled papers, and a pile of laundry sat like quiet witnesses to his late-night struggle. He rubbed his eyes, staring at his reflection in the cracked mirror propped against the wall. For the first time, he really looked. The dark circles under his eyes, the slouch in his shoulders, the silent exhaustion that weighed on him. He didn't see the version of himself that his friends knew. The kid who laughed too loud at lunch, who cracked jokes to cover the silence. He didn't see the version of himself his teachers saw either. The distracted boy who just didn't apply himself. He saw someone in between. A boy caught in a war with time. The phone buzzed again. New notifications. Photos from last night's party filled the screen. Smiles. Lights. Everyone looking like they belonged. Daniel stared until his chest tightened. A whisper escaped his lips. That's the mask. Because deep down, he knew half of them were faking too. Hiding loneliness with loud music. Covering fear with laughter. Pretending like time didn't matter. Like the future was too far away to worry about. He thought back to when he was younger, maybe 10 years old, lying on the grass with his cousin after a baseball game. They had looked up at the stars, promising each other that they would grow up to do something great, something that mattered. Back then, the future felt wide open, infinite. But now, it felt like sand slipping through his fingers. Daniel pressed his forehead against the cool glass of the mirror, closing his eyes. The narrator's voice breaks in. The mask we wear in our teen years is dangerous, because it convinces us that wasting time is normal, that drifting is harmless. But the mirror never lies. It shows us what we are becoming, not what we pretend to be. A knock at the door startled him. His mother peeked in, holding a basket of laundry. She studied him for a moment, noticing the slump in his posture, the quiet heaviness in his face. "You okay, baby?" she asked softly. Daniel forced a smile, but his reflection betrayed him. "Yeah, I'm fine," he said. She didn't push. She just set the laundry down and kissed the top of his head before leaving. But her silence hurt more than her questions. It was the silence of someone who no longer knew how to reach him. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the unfinished project still sitting on his desk. His heart pounded. A choice was forming, not loud, not obvious, but deep. Would he keep wearing the mask? Or would he finally face the mirror? He stood up slowly, walked to the desk, and opened his notebook again. His hands shook as he wrote, not because the project mattered, but because choosing to face the mirror meant choosing to fight. The scene closes on Daniel's reflection, caught between the boy he pretended to be and the man he was trying to become, with the faint echo of a ticking clock filling the silence. Fade to black. Sunday evening settled over the neighborhood like a heavy blanket. Street lights flickered on, one by one, as Daniel sat at the dining table staring at an untouched plate of food. His mom and little sister talked quietly across from him, their voices distant, like echoes underwater. Forks clinked against plates, but Daniel barely moved. The silence inside him was louder than anything else. His mom glanced at him a few times. "Daniel, you okay? You've been quiet all day." He nodded without lifting his eyes. "I'm fine." The lie tasted metallic in his mouth, but the truth was that something had shifted since yesterday. That reflection in the mirror had stuck with him. It was haunting him now, even as he tried to swallow dinner. He couldn't unsee it. The tired boy who was running out of time, but pretending he had all the time in the world. His sister nudged him under the table, trying to pull him back into the conversation. "Hey, guess what? I scored a goal at practice today," she said, her eyes bright with pride. Daniel forced a smile. "That's awesome, kiddo." But she frowned. "You didn't even look at me when I said it." That stung, because she was right. He was here physically, but mentally, he was drifting further away every day. Later, after the dishes were cleared, Daniel slipped out of the house. He walked aimlessly through the neighborhood streets, hands shoved deep into his hoodie pockets. The air was cool, the kind of autumn chill that hinted winter was coming. Every porch light glowed warm, like little reminders of families gathered together, laughing, living. He felt like an outsider walking past windows full of life. He ended up at the old playground where he and his friends used to hang out after school. The swings creaked in the wind. Graffiti covered the slide. It looked smaller now, almost shrunken, as if it had aged while he wasn't looking. Daniel sat on a swing, letting it rock gently beneath him. And that's when the silence hit him hardest. Not the silence of the playground, but the silence of all the words he never said, the apologies he never gave, the questions he never asked, the dreams he never chased. The narrator's voice rises softly. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes silence is the heaviest weight we carry. It's the words unsaid, the moments unlived, the time wasted. And teenagers mistake that silence for comfort, until it starts to suffocate them. Daniel looked up at the sky. Stars blinked faintly through the haze. He remembered that night years ago, lying in the grass with his cousin, promising the future would be theirs. He whispered now, almost to the stars themselves, "Where did that boy go?" The wind carried no answer, only the faint hum of traffic in the distance. His phone buzzed. Another group chat notification. More plans, more noise, more masks. Daniel didn't even open it. He turned the phone off, slipping it back into his pocket. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, he let himself sit in the silence. Not the fake silence of distraction, but the real silence that hurt, the kind that forced him to face the truth. Tears stung his eyes, but he didn't wipe them away. He whispered again, this time to himself, I can't keep wasting time. The scene fades with Daniel alone on the swing, the faint creak echoing like a metronome, keeping time he could no longer ignore. Fade to black. The morning sun crept through Daniel's blinds, casting thin golden stripes across his bedroom wall. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above him, its blade slicing through the air like seconds he couldn't catch. The night at the playground had left him restless. He barely slept, his mind replaying fragments of memories he thought he had buried. He dragged himself out of bed and opened the drawer of his desk. Inside was a shoebox covered in dust. He hadn't touched it in years. Slowly, he pulled it out, the cardboard sagging with age. Inside were scraps of his teenage life, ticket stubs from a fair, photos of him and his cousin, crumpled notes they used to pass in class. And at the very bottom, folded neatly, still intact, was a letter. His chest tightened when he saw the handwriting. His cousin's. Daniel unfolded it carefully, like it might crumble in his hands. The letter was simple, written in the uneven scrawl of a 14-year-old. Promise me we'll never waste our time. Life's too short. One day, we'll make something big together. Something that matters. The words blurred as Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He remembered the night they wrote those promises under the stars. His cousin was gone now, an accident 2 summers ago that still haunted the family. Daniel had avoided thinking about it, burying the pain under distractions, under silence. But now, staring at the letter, he felt the weight of it crashing down. He whispered to the empty room, I broke the promise. The narrator's voice cuts in, steady and soft. Teenagers think they have forever, but forever can end in an instant. Every wasted day is a day you can't get back. And sometimes, it's not just your dreams you're losing. It's the promises you made to others, the ones who believed in you. Daniel pressed the letter to his forehead, his hands trembling. His cousin had believed in him, maybe more than he believed in himself. And now he was gone, leaving Daniel with nothing but words on paper and a hollow ache in his chest. He stood up suddenly, pacing the room. His reflection in the mirror across the room stared back, pale and tired but sharper now, as if daring him to change. He grabbed his hoodie and stuffed the letter into his pocket. Outside, the neighborhood buzzed with life. Kids rode bikes down the street, laughter spilling into the crisp air. Parents loaded groceries into cars. A man jogged by, earbuds in, lost in his own rhythm. Daniel walked through it all, his footsteps heavy, his breath uneven. He didn't know exactly where he was going, only that he couldn't sit in that silence anymore. He found himself at the cemetery on the edge of town. The gate squeaked as he pushed it open. Rows of headstones stretched out before him, each one a name, a story, a life cut short. He walked slowly, scanning the markers until he found the one he knew by heart. Kneeling, he traced his cousin's name with his fingers. His throat tightened. For a long time, he couldn't speak. The silence here felt sacred, heavier than the silence of his room, heavier than the silence of the swing. Finally, his voice cracked. I'm sorry. I thought I had time. I thought I could just wait. But I wasted it. I wasted everything we talked about. His words spilled out in a rush, raw and broken. I swear, I won't waste any more. Not for me. For you. The wind rustled the trees around the cemetery, carrying the faint scent of pine. A bird landed on the headstone for a moment, tilting its head, before flying away. Daniel closed his eyes, taking it as a sign, a quiet acknowledgement. The narrator's voice returns, firmer now. This is where illusions shatter, when we realize time isn't endless, when loss forces us to confront the truth we keep running from. Teenagers think tomorrow is guaranteed, but the truth is, tomorrow is a fragile gift. Daniel stood, his fists clenched. For the first time in years, his chest felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, but lighter. He wiped his face with the sleeve of his hoodie, taking one last look at the stone before walking back through the cemetery gates. As he stepped onto the street again, the world felt different. Not softer, not kinder, but sharper. Every sound, every face, every moment carried a weight he hadn't noticed before. He felt the letter pressing against his chest in his pocket, a reminder that silence and wasted time had stolen enough from him already. This time, he wouldn't let it fade to black. The rain had returned that evening, soft at first, then steadily pouring, blurring the edges of the town into a watercolor of lights and shadows. Daniel walked slowly under the flickering glow of the street lamps, his hood pulled over his head, hands buried deep in his pockets. The cemetery visit still lingered in his chest like a weight he couldn't shake off, and though he had spoken aloud to his cousin's grave, the silence inside him hadn't left. The streets felt emptier than usual. Shop windows were shuttered, neon signs buzzing weakly. A diner on the corner glowed faintly, the smell of coffee and fried eggs drifting out when someone opened the door. Daniel hesitated, then pushed it open, the bell jingling softly. Inside, the diner was warm but quiet, half the booths empty. A few truckers sat hunched over their meals. A waitress poured refills with a tired smile, and the radio hummed low in the background with some old blues song. Daniel slid into a corner booth, staring at the rain streaking down the window beside him. He didn't order anything. He just sat there, the letter in his pocket pressing against his chest like a reminder he couldn't escape. As he stared out at the rain, his mind drifted back to all the moments he had wasted. Nights spent scrolling endlessly on his phone, hours hanging around with people who didn't care about him, afternoons when he had a chance to start something, anything, but told himself, "I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow." The word echoed in his mind until it felt suffocating. He pressed his fists against the table, his jaw tightening. For the first time, he realized those tomorrows had been stolen, little by little, until years had slipped through his fingers like sand. The door to the diner opened again, the bell jingling. Daniel glanced up. An older man walked in, wearing a worn-out jacket and carrying a book under his arm. His face was lined with age, his eyes sharp but tired. He slid into the booth across from Daniel without asking, as if he had chosen him deliberately. Daniel frowned. "Do I know you?" The man smiled faintly. "Not yet." He set the book on the table, tapping it lightly. "But I know that look. I've seen it before." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "What look?" "The look of someone realizing they've been living like time is infinite, and the regret that follows when they finally understand it isn't." Daniel froze, his throat dry. He didn't know why, but the man's words struck deeper than he expected. The man opened the book, flipping through pages filled with scribbles and notes. "I kept a journal when I was your age. Wrote down everything I wanted to do, every dream, every plan. Thought I had forever." He looked at Daniel, his eyes heavy. "But forever doesn't last. And if you're not careful, one day you wake up and realize all you've got left are scraps of paper and empty wishes." The words made Daniel's chest tighten again. He looked down at the table, whispering, "I already feel like that. And I'm only 17. The man leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "Then you're luckier than most. Because you've seen the truth early. You've still got time to do something about it. Don't waste it." For a long moment, Daniel just stared at the man, unsure if he was real or some kind of vision born from his own guilt. But the weight of the words anchored him. He nodded slowly, feeling the sting of tears at the corners of his eyes. The man closed the book, stood up, and gave a final nod. "Make the promise again. This time keep it." Then he walked out into the rain, vanishing into the blur of the night. Daniel sat frozen in the booth, his heart pounding. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his cousin's letter, laying it on the table. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, mingling with the ink on the page. He whispered, almost like a prayer, "I won't waste it. Not anymore." The narrator's voice rises, steady and solemn. "Regret is a shadow that follows us. But regret can also be a teacher. It can break us, or it can wake us. And for those who wake in time, regret becomes not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new one." Daniel tucked the letter back into his pocket, stood, and left the diner. The rain poured harder, soaking him instantly, but he didn't care. For the first time, he felt alive in the storm, every drop against his skin reminding him of the seconds passing, the seconds he couldn't afford to waste anymore. He walked faster, his steps echoing against the wet pavement. carrying him towards something he couldn't name yet, but something that mattered. Fade to black. The next morning arrived gray and heavy, the kind of morning where even the sun seemed reluctant to show itself. Daniel stood in the cramped bathroom of his small house, staring into the fogged-up mirror after a too-hot shower. Droplets slid down the glass, blurring his reflection, making him look like a stranger. He wiped the steam away with the palm of his hand, and there he was, pale, tired eyes, dark circles etched from sleepless nights, and a jaw clenched with unspoken words. For a long moment, he just looked at himself, as if daring his reflection to answer the question haunting his chest. Who are you becoming? He reached into his pocket and pulled out the worn envelope, his cousin's letter. The paper was bent, edges softened by constant folding and unfolding. He had read it more times than he could count, but today felt different. Today, the words pressed harder against his ribs, like they were demanding action. He unfolded it slowly, his eyes tracing the familiar handwriting. Don't waste your days like they're endless. They're not. Time doesn't belong to you, it borrows you. And if you're not careful, it takes everything back before you've given anything to the world. The words hit harder in the silence of the small bathroom. Daniel pressed the paper against the mirror, right over his reflection's heart. For a moment, it was as if his cousin was speaking through him, forcing him to confront the truth he had avoided for years. He whispered aloud, his voice trembling. I've wasted so much already, but I don't want to waste more. Not one more day. The bathroom felt too small, the air too thick. He shoved the letter into his pocket and stumbled into his bedroom, pulling open drawers, digging under piles of clothes and books. He wasn't looking for anything specific. He was looking for proof. Proof of all the times he had promised himself he'd start, but never did. There were notebooks half filled with ideas, sketches of things never built, to-do lists with blank check marks. He found an old guitar in the corner, dust collecting on the strings, untouched for years. His hands trembled as he strummed it once, the sound weak, hollow, but full of memory. He set it down ashamed. Every object was a reminder of waiting, of excuses, of believing there would always be more time. Suddenly, anger welled up inside him, anger at himself. He slammed the drawer shut, the noise sharp in the stillness. His breath came heavy. Enough, he whispered. Then louder, enough. The words echoed in the small room. He grabbed a fresh notebook from his shelf and opened to the first blank page. The emptiness stared back at him, daring him to waste it. He picked up a pen, his hand trembling, and wrote at the top in bold, shaky letters. No more wasted days. The narrator's voice cuts in, soft but unrelenting. We wait. We stall. We tell ourselves tomorrow will come, and tomorrow will be kinder. But tomorrow is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid the pain of starting today. And the truth is, the only time we have is now. Daniel closed the notebook and pressed it against his chest, breathing hard. He didn't know where to begin or how to fix the years already lost, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid of the weight of starting. The mirror in the bathroom still held the faint outline of his reflection, blurred by condensation. He returned to it, holding the notebook in one hand, the letter in the other. He stared into his own eyes, seeing not just who he was, but who he could be if he stopped running. In the fogged-up glass, he imagined his cousin standing beside him, a faint smile on his face, like he was waiting for Daniel to finally understand. I won't waste it anymore, Daniel whispered again, firmer this time. I swear. Outside, the clouds began to break, just enough for a sliver of light to pierce through, landing across the bathroom sink, across Daniel's trembling hands. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Fade out. The community center smelled faintly of floor polish and old paper, a mixture of lives that had passed through its doors and left fragments of themselves behind. Daniel stood just inside the entrance, clutching his notebook like a lifeline. The echo of basketballs bouncing from the gym down the hall mixed with the low murmur of voices spilling from the meeting room ahead. He hadn't wanted to come here. Every step from his house to the center had felt like dragging chains, the voice in his head whispering, "You don't belong here. You're too late. You've wasted too much." But another voice, the one that had grown louder since the letter and the mirror, kept pushing him forward. Start anyway. even if you're scared. Especially if you're scared. He peeked through the open door of the meeting room. A dozen people sat in a circle of folding chairs, notebooks on their laps, eyes attentive. The sign outside had said, Youth Writers Workshop, and though Daniel was 23, he felt like an intruder. Everyone inside looked younger, brimming with raw energy, their faces glowing with the hope of beginning. Daniel's stomach twisted. He almost turned back, almost let the old habit win. But then his eyes landed on the far side of the circle. There was an empty chair. One chair waiting. He stepped inside. The scraping sound of his shoes against the tile floor made every head turn. Heat rose up his neck, flooding his face, but he forced himself to move toward that empty seat. Each step felt heavier than the last until finally, he sat down. The workshop leader, a woman with silver-streaked hair and warm eyes, smiled at him. Glad you could join us. We were just about to share first drafts. What's your name? His throat tightened. For a second, no sound came out. Then, barely above a whisper, Daniel. Welcome, Daniel, she said kindly. Would you like to share something? The question hit him like a hammer. His notebook lay on his lap, its blank first page, still screaming at him. He hadn't written more than the words, no more wasted days. What could he share? The silence in the room grew thick, pressing on him. Daniel's hands trembled as he opened the notebook. The blank page reflected his failure back at him. But then, as if guided by some invisible force, he flipped to the next page and began to write. His pen scratched furiously against the paper, words spilling out faster than his fear could catch them. He didn't think, didn't plan. He just wrote. Finally, he stopped. His chest rose and felt like he'd just run a marathon. He looked up. Every face was waiting, expectant. He swallowed hard and began to read. His voice was shaky at first, breaking on the edges, but as the sentences unfolded, something inside him steadied. He read about nights lost in distractions, about promises he had broken to himself, about the illusion of endless time that had stolen years from his life. His words were raw, unfinished, but honest. When he finished, silence filled the room. For a moment, Daniel thought they hated it. But then, one of the younger writers, a girl with braids and bright eyes, spoke softly. That sounded like me. Like what I feel every night. Another nodded. Same here. I keep waiting to start. Maybe I don't have to anymore. Daniel's chest tightened, but this time, it wasn't with fear. It was something else. Something lighter. The leader gave him a look of quiet approval and said, Thank you, Daniel. That took courage. Don't stop writing. The circle moved on, others sharing their work, but Daniel sat stunned. His words, his messy, unpolished truth, had touched someone. The empty chair hadn't just been waiting for him. It had been waiting for his story. Later, as the meeting ended and people began to file out, Daniel lingered. The girl with braids stopped beside him and smiled. You should come back next week. We need your voice here. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel like he was wasting space. He didn't feel like he was running out of time. He felt present. As he left the community center, the evening air was crisp, the sky streaked with orange and purple. He walked slower than usual, savoring it, the notebook clutched tightly in his hand. The narrator's voice rises, steady and inspiring. Sometimes, the chair you think is too empty, too late, too far gone, is the chair that changes your life. Don't be afraid to sit down in it, because when you do, you realize time isn't just something you lose. It's something you can claim, one choice at a time. Daniel looked up at the first star peeking through the fading light. For the first time in forever, he believed tomorrow might be worth something. Not because it was promised, but because he had finally chosen today. Fade out. Rain hammered against Daniel's bedroom window, each drop racing the next down the glass, like 100 restless clocks. The storm outside mirrored the chaos inside his chest. He sat at his desk, the small lamp casting a golden circle of light over his open notebook, the rest of the room swallowed in shadows. He had returned from the writing workshop hours ago, but his mind hadn't settled since. Those faces, their nods, their words, echoed in him. For the first time in years, he felt seen. But with that came something terrifying, responsibility. If he kept writing, if he kept showing up, He couldn't hide behind the excuse of wasted time anymore. He would have to choose who he wanted to become. The storm boomed, thunder rattling the old frame of the house. Daniel gripped his pen tighter. Every instinct told him to turn on a movie, to scroll endlessly on his phone, to sink back into the old habits that numbed him. But the lamp's glow anchored him. The storm could rage outside. He had his own storm to face here, at this desk. He stared at the words he had written earlier at the workshop. No more wasted days. For words. Simple. Demanding. They felt heavier now than when he had first scribbled them down. Slowly, almost painfully, he began to write again. The pen scratched against the paper. Each word pulled from a place deeper than he thought he could reach. He wrote about fear. The fear of failing, of never being enough, of being forgotten. He wrote about nights lost to distractions and mornings that started with regret. He wrote about his father's silence and his mother's tired eyes, about the empty spaces in his life that only he could fill. As the storm roared louder, Daniel's writing grew fiercer. His hand cramped, his shoulders ached, but he didn't stop. The words came like a flood he had been holding back for years. His heart pounded in rhythm with the rain, each sentence a rebellion against the lie that he had endless time. At one point, he dropped the pen, his breath ragged. He leaned back, staring at the messy scrawl covering the pages. For a moment, fear returned. What if this is nothing? What if no one cares? But then, the lightning outside flashed, illuminating the room, and in that instant, Daniel saw himself reflected in the window. He didn't look like the boy wasting away in front of a screen anymore. He looked like someone fighting to matter, fighting to live. He picked up the pen again. The hours bled away. Midnight passed, then 1, then 2. Still he wrote. When exhaustion finally forced him to stop, his notebook was no longer empty. Dozens of pages brimmed with raw emotion, fragments of a voice he was just beginning to trust. Daniel set the pen down, his hand shaking, his chest strangely light. The storm outside began to quiet, the rain slowing to a gentle tap. He switched off the lamp and sat in the darkness, listening. For the first time, the silence didn't scare him. The narrator's voice rises, calm but firm. There comes a night when the storm outside isn't louder than the storm inside. That's the night you choose. To stay drowning in excuses, or to fight for a voice you almost lost. Don't wait for tomorrow's calm. Write in the storm. Live in the storm. Because the storm is where you're born again. Daniel closed his notebook, pressing his palm against the cover as though sealing a promise. He knew these pages weren't perfect. They weren't polished or ready to share. But they were his. They were proof that time hadn't beaten him yet. He lay down on his bed, exhaustion pulling at him. But this time, sleep felt different. Not an escape, but a rest earned after battle. Outside, the last drops of rain slid down the window, clearing the glass. And in his chest, something new flickered, a steady, fragile flame that refused to go out. Fade to black. The first rays of dawn crept through Daniel's window, brushing his desk with a soft glow. The storm had passed, leaving behind a wash-clean world, streets glistening with rain, air sharp with renewal. Daniel sat in silence, his notebook open in front of him, pages filled with the words he had poured out in the storm's fury. His eyes were heavy with sleeplessness, but his spirit felt strangely awake. There was something about surviving a night like that, fighting the urge to waste, choosing creation over distraction, that changed a person. He ran his fingers over the ink-stained pages, as though touching proof of his own resilience. Downstairs, the creak of the old wooden floor signaled his mother waking. For years she had seen him drift, had tried and failed to pull him out of his haze. Daniel knew she expected another day of him disappearing into screens and excuses. But not today. He stood, stretching stiff muscles, then carefully lifted the notebook. His heart hammered as he carried it down the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last, but he didn't turn back. In the kitchen, his mother stood at the stove, the faint smell of coffee filling the air. She turned, surprised to see him awake so early. "Daniel," she asked softly, her voice half wary, half hopeful. He swallowed, then placed the notebook on the table. "I stayed up," he said. His voice cracked, but he didn't look away. "I've been writing. I I don't want to waste time anymore. His mother blinked, processing his words. She glanced at the notebook, its worn cover, the edges of pages brimming with messy handwriting. Slowly, she reached out and touched it, as though testing whether it was real. For a long moment, there was silence. Then her eyes filled, and she pulled him into a hug so sudden, so fierce, it nearly broke him. "I've been waiting to hear you say that," she whispered. Daniel clung to her, the weight of years of wasted hours pressing down on him, but also lifting, as though finally set down. In her embrace, he felt not just forgiveness, but permission to move forward, to grow, to claim a life that was his. When she let go, Daniel sat at the table. He flipped open the notebook to a page from last night, raw words scrawled in uneven lines. His mother read silently, tears slipping down her cheeks, while Daniel sat trembling, exposed but unashamed. The narrator's voice begins, steady and resolute. "Your teenage years are not forever. They are seeds. What you plant in them grows into the life you will harvest. Waste them, and you'll wake to a field of regrets. Water them with effort, courage, and vision, and you'll wake to a garden of possibilities. The time is not endless, but the impact you create in that time can be." Daniel looked out the kitchen window, where the sun climbed slowly above the horizon. He thought of the years he had lost, the nights spent chasing distractions instead of dreams. But now, he saw that time not only as a warning but as fuel, proof of what he refused to repeat. He turned to his mother, determination tightening his jaw. "I'm not done," he said quietly. "I'm just starting." She smiled, her hand resting on the notebook. "Then make it count." The light grew stronger, filling the room, painting everything gold. Daniel felt it on his face, warm and unrelenting, like the future itself pressing against him. He reached for his pen, flipped to a blank page, and began again. The storm had ended, but the work had just begun. The narrator's final words rise, carrying the weight of the journey. Don't wait for years to vanish before you wake up. Don't fall for the illusion that you have endless time. You don't. Start now. Choose now. Write your story before someone else writes it for you. The world is waiting for the pages only you can create. Fade out. Screen black. Words appear. Don't waste your teen years. As Daniel looked out the window at the sunrise, his mother's words echoed. Then make it count. Here, the phrase, "make it count," means use your time wisely. Make your actions meaningful. Imagine every day is a coin. You can spend it carelessly, or invest it in something that grows. When Daniel opened his notebook and began writing again, he was choosing what we call a fresh start. This expression means to begin again, free from the mistakes of the past. Teens often think they have endless time, but starting now gives you the greatest advantage. Earlier in the story, Daniel fought against the illusion of endless time. The word illusion means something that looks real but isn't. Like a mirage in the desert, it tricks you. Many young people fall into this illusion, believing tomorrow will always be there. But tomorrow is never guaranteed. Another powerful phrase from Daniel's journey is wake-up call. A wake-up call is a shocking realization that forces you to change. For Daniel, his stormy night of reflection was his wake-up call to stop wasting and start building. So, let's repeat these useful phrases. Make it count, use your time wisely. Fresh start, begin again without carrying past mistakes. Illusion of endless time, false belief that you have unlimited chances. Wake-up call, moment of realization that pushes you to change. Each of these phrases is not just vocabulary. It's a life lesson hidden in language. Time is not endless. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Start with what you have, where you are. Your teen years are seeds. What you plant now, discipline, learning, creativity, will shape the garden of your future. Pain can become power. Regret, failure, and even wasted time can fuel your determination to never waste again. Small steps create big change. Writing one page, practicing one skill, showing up one more time. These build the future. Choose your story. If you don't write your own story, someone else will write for you. Your life is not a rehearsal. It's the real stage. And every day is a page in your story. Don't be fooled by the illusion of endless time. Don't let the years slip away in distraction. Start now. Build now. Right now. Because one day, you'll look back and you will either say, I wasted my chance, or I made it count. And that difference begins today.